Hello, Erica Hargaden here, certified child sleep consultant with my private practice, Babogue. I'm the creator of the Sleep Series, which is an online sleep program built around my 7 steps to better sleep, and I'm a mum of 3. So there's very little that I haven't seen on the sleep front myself. And what I'm going to talk about today, I have gone through 3 times with my own crew, and 2 of them very successfully. The first one, you can see that story on my grid and on my website, but it worked out well, and he sleeps, brilliantly. He's 11 now, and he sleeps, 11 to 12 hours at night still. But the other 2, I very much molded their sleep from birth, and I want to give you my 5 top tips around this today in terms of newborn sleep. But there's a few little other bits that I want to impart on you before I jump into that. Newborns vary hugely. A lot of them will be very, very sleepy babies when they're born. They, tend to do a lot of sleeping, maybe up until 3 weeks. I call the 3-week period, the wake up time. Maybe they're kind of recovering from their own journey. You're recovering from your birth. And really what I like parents to focus on in certainly the first 3 weeks is recovery, forming bond. And if you're a breastfeeding parent, really getting to grips with your skills around breastfeeding and getting your supply in and availing of as much resources and support around that you can. Be that maybe a private breastfeeding consultant, maybe that's going to be from your public health nurse or from your public health services, maybe it's going to be the Lesh League, so get to grips with your, breastfeeding, and that's really, really important. If you choose to be a bottle feeding parent, get to grips with, your feeding as well, what bottles maybe suit your baby, trying to get to grips with how regular your baby needs to be fed. I really don't believe in having too much structure in those first 3 weeks. Bond, recovery, feeding. They are, just the best tips, and getting as much help as you possibly can. So if somebody that you trust and love asks you, can they help you? Say yes. Say yes. Yes, you can do my washing. Yes, you can mop my floors. Yes, you can, look after the baby while I get an extra couple of hours sleep during the day. Say yes. Now, I know the times that we're in, we need to keep our circle small and everything. So, choose from your circle, and don't be afraid to ask for help either. Sometimes people feel they're interfering if they're offering you help. So don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for it. Okay. The very first thing that I think is important, once you certainly get beyond, maybe the 3 to 6 week marker, I would say 3 to 6 weeks with a breastfed baby, maybe from 3 weeks with a bottle fed baby, is to try and move away from associations of feeding and sleep. So try and get into a feed, play, sleep cycle. Okay. So essentially what you're doing is disassociation of feeding from sleep, because this is one of the biggest issues that I come across as a consultant, that your baby is into a cycle of feeding to sleep, be that breast or bottle. I think when people hear feeding to sleep, they think of breastfeeding. No, this can be a breastfeeding issue or a bottle feeding issue. So once you maybe get into a rhythm with supply, once you get into a rhythm with what kind of structure your bottle fed baby has, try and move away from feeding to sleep. Okay, so feed, have a little bit of a play, and then get your baby down to sleep. Now, part of this will be watching out for what suits your baby in terms of a feed structure, so how often they need to be fed, and also how long your baby can stay awake between sleeps. Now, this varies massively in the newborn phase. So I get a lot of questions around, well, how long should my 3-week-old be able to stay awake? I don't know. That's the truth, because this varies hugely. And this is down to you as a parent watching your baby and recognizing their sleepy cues. So rubbing of eyes, potentially, getting a bit cranky, maybe zoning out, yawning, those kind of things. Now, in the newborn phase, it can be difficult to figure this out. So I would say work off like 45-minute cycles, maybe around the 3-week mark. And as your baby gets closer and closer to 12 weeks, this will stretch out to maybe an hour and a half. As they get closer to 6 months, this will stretch out to maybe 2 hours. So you got to figure out, what suits your child. So your first tip is this feed, play, sleep cycle. And your second tip, coping in with this, is to watch them and figure out their wake period. Now, a kind of side tip to this is to write everything down, lads. I'm looking for my notebook. So, notebook, all right? Bog standard notebook. I had one on every child. It's actually up there. The 3 notebooks are there that I kept on each baby. So if you write things down, you're going to remember them because you'll read them. If you're trying to remember it in your sleep-deprived brain, you won't. And that's just fact. You're tired from growing a baby. You're tired from the journey of having a baby. You're recovering from that. And you're sleep-deprived. And a sleep-deprived brain won't hold information like a rested brain. Hell, I'm rested and I still need to write absolutely everything down in my notebook or I'll forget because I'm a parent. My next tip is that I really do recommend swaddling. Now, I know that a lot of hospitals don't allow swaddling in the hospital, which is fine. They have their reasons. But I believe that when you come home from the hospital, you should get into the routine of swaddling for sleep. It does help a newborn baby feel quite secure in their environment, and it can really help against the startle reflex that they have at this early phase, so which can wake them up, and we've all seen that. Can wake them up. So swaddling can be really beneficial to newborn sleep. Now, there's loads and loads of really good YouTube videos out there. So have a little search and see if you get one that helps you figure out maybe swaddling with an approved swaddle blanket. Now, there's a good few of them out there. 2 I really like. The Miracle blanket, which I used on my own children, and the Love to Dream swaddle, which is a little bit less restrictive than a traditional swaddle and may help your baby transition into the sleeping bags when they're a little bit older, maybe around the kind of 8 to 12 weeks mark, a little bit easier. So that's worth taking into account. But there is lots of options out there and I really, really do recommend it. Okay, so that's my third one, swaddle. Now, swaddling is part of safe sleep guidelines. It doesn't necessarily recommend it, but it doesn't recommend loose blankets. So I wouldn't recommend that you put any child down with loose blankets or bedding. That's part of my safe sleep guidelines and to be honest, global safe sleep guidelines. So I would recommend that you watch my IGTV in relation to that. Now, coupled with swaddling, I would recommend that you create a consistent place of sleep for your baby. So Moses baskets are fabulous. They're in your kitchen because at this phase, in the newborn phase, you need to keep your baby close. So Moses basket with a stand in the kitchen, perfection. You can see baby, they're right next to you, swaddle them up, use a soother in the early phases if you need to, and get them used to going down into their sleep environment. But one of the things to kind of get into your head is you're doing nothing wrong if you're holding your baby. Nothing at all. So rock, roll, do everything you can to get them to go to sleep at this phase, in the newborn phase, because that's what they need. They need sleep to grow, recover from their journey. So you're doing nothing wrong. Do what you can. Let them lie on you, but do your swaddle and maybe put them down into your Moses basket and do what you can to see if you can get them to go to sleep in their sleep environment. By doing this, you're creating consistencies around their sleep. So it's going to really, really help you guys to form recognized patterns around sleep. Now, my fourth tip is, and this is a controversial one, and Definitely your mother or your grandmother is going to tell you that I'm wrong, and that's fine. But I've tried and tested this, is to wake them for feeds during the day. Now, there'll be lots of babies that are born small and require waking for feeding at night. So if you've been advised to do that, do it. Absolutely do it. But I do recommend waking babies for feeds during the day so that you're getting as much of their nutritional need in the daytime, so that maybe they're less likely to look for it at night. Now, a newborn baby is going to need to be fed at night. So compartmentalize that, lads. Box it off. You're going to be awake at night. But if you get into the cycle of waking for feeds during the day, as they grow and develop, and their maybe need to feed at night diminishes, then they're less likely to continue to wake for it. So get into a regular pattern. So getting into a regular pattern around feeding, maybe moving away from demand-led feeding at the right time for you to structured feeding will help with this. You will find with a bottle-fed baby that you will get into the rhythm of this a little bit easier, but it is totally possible to do with breastfed babies. I did it with my own crew, and they all slept through the night quite early on. Now, not every baby is different, and they will all sleep through the night when they're ready, but some will need a little bit more assistance than others. Okay, so waking for feeds. So don't let them sleep through feeds during the day. So if your baby needs to be fed every 3 hours, wake them for feeds. So get into a regular pattern, and writing things down is definitely going to help with that. My other tip is start your day every day at 7 a.m. with a feed in a room that's not associated with sleep. So a brightly lit living space. So that's my last tip. That's tip number 5. By doing that, you're giving yourself a starting point to every single day. Okay? And then you can figure out your feeding pattern thereon and figure out your sleeping pattern thereon. Now, I totally recognize that's not easy to do when you've had a bad night. I've been there. It's not easy, but by doing it, you are going to get yourself a little bit closer to maybe your own family sleep goals. So bring in some help. You know, thankfully now, you know, daddies get a little bit of time off when babies are born, which they always should have done. And you can maybe get daddy to do this when he's maybe had a decent sleep all night, depending on what you guys decide to do around your kind of like relationship sleep when a newborn comes in. I did this with my husband, so I always slept in another room with the baby, got on with what needed to be happening at night. And at the weekends, because there was no parental leave back then for daddies, he would get up and do the 7 a.m. feed on a Saturday and a Sunday, and I would sleep on. That was what we established. Monday to Friday, that didn't happen because he was going to work. And we just got on with it. I always too went back to bed when babies were going back to bed, when I just had one. When you have another child, that can be hard to do, but try and get your sleep wherever you can. So they're my 5 tips. So let's go back. Feed, play, sleep cycle, swaddle, watch your wake periods, wake to feed during the day, and start your day at 7 a.m. with a feed. Now, my newborn sleep series goes through this in so much more detail and so many more tips, and gives you a wider understanding of how to kind of regulate sleep from quite early. So if you want to learn more about that or learn more about me, check out babogue.com. Thanks a million, guys.